Three, two, one. Recording has started. Welcome everyone to our evening session we have. Let me bring up my screen here. On 10/13, 6 p.m. Again, I'm your instructor, Darryl Dunnington. I'd like to welcome you to our Monday evening class. So today we want to make sure that we talk about data and data modeling as it relates to a case and why we even create a case. But let's make sure that we review from this morning. Remember, I encouraged all of you to get your essays in based upon how our course is designed. It is structured, targeted learning. We keep narrowing down what you need to know. So you read the Pega modules, then you come and listen to a lecture, then you come and listen to the summary, the documents, the essay, and that should prepare you for knowledge, for your certification, skill when we get to the exercises and projects. And then, of course, for your interview, so you can have a conversation about the technology. So you should find this morning's information out on the WebEx that was sent to you. You can go to your channel and you can listen to the whole video again, or you can come over to the recordings for the 13th and you have the summary that we have that you can listen to. Those are always good to listen to because, of course, they're in Spanish, they're in Mexico Spanish, and may be easier for you to listen to and understand. Again, want to encourage everyone, if you have not completed the work on 10/9, you have one essay to do. You have your use cases, the 10 use cases to do. Those are quick and easy. You read through it, so make sure you make that happen. And then on 10/8 and 10/6, 10/8, you have the 4. I want to thank you. I think there's about a third of the documents. I counted about 26 documents, should be a little over 80 in there. So there's about 26 documents for 10/8. There are at least half of the documents for 10/6. So I know that half of you have got it done. I need the other half of you to get it done. All right. The first part of the class is top heavy because we're not just teaching one concept. We're teaching you the overall concept along with that one concept so you understand where it fits in the whole domain. As we continue, you're not going to have as many essays. We structured it that way so that by the time we get to some of the core topics that we need for you to know, you've already been over it once or twice, sometimes 3 times, and now you're familiar with it. Remember, learning is repetition. Learning is repetition. You have to learn it over and over and over again. You have to hear it, you have to see it, you have to touch it. And so we make sure that that happens for you when you're in this class. So today's session, I will focus on data model. That's part of what you should have started on the 9th, which was last Thursday, and what we are talking about today, building a data model. What is a data model? What does it look like? How is it utilized within the Pega technology? We'll answer all of those questions for you. Again, these conversations will be short. I'll probably do about a 30-minute presentation for you. Your exercises will take you through the details, and of course, you have the summary documents to listen to. So this is just to make sure that you understand the concepts, help you get familiar with the platform, the Pega platform. For our next session, that will be Wednesday, we will talk about the UI. We call it Constellation. If any of you are familiar with React, React is a UI technology that many people use. Pega has integrated React into their UI. They call it Constellation. And so I'll give you an outline of that. Again, we do have our different time zones. And so I have to remember what the times are. You guys are always on the same time. So stop there and I will come over to App Studio. So let's have a conversation about a data model. A data model. A data model is the information that is represented in your application. That's a simple definition of a data model. Now, in Pega technology, we say that there is no use for a case if you don't have any use for the data. There's no use for a case if you don't have use for a data. So you only create a case type if you need to capture data. Well, it makes sense. An application may have multiple case types because there is a variety of data that you may need to capture. So for instance, let's go to our wealth management application, and you'll see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 5 case types. That tells me, to inform you that this application has 5 case types. So there's different types of information that we need to capture. Some of that information is shared across the case types, and some of them are only unique to the case type. So we'll take a look at which ones are shared. How do we understand what data is shared across all 5 of these case types? Something like maybe the customer number, the bank account number, that has to do with all of these. If I'm transferring money, I have to have an account number. If I'm investing in the stock market or financial instruments, I have to have my account number. If I have a plan or strategy to optimize my taxes, then I have to look at my account number. So that's a good example of a piece of data that may be used across all of the case types. But you have some that may be unique to a particular case type, like the tax percentage. Well, that really wouldn't apply to the wealth or investment or international transfer. That tax percentage has to do with only tax optimization case type. So let's start with our data. Pega has 2 types of data, or stores 2 types of data. You have to go back to our conversations about the situational layer cake. Remember the 4 layers: org, division, framework, implementation, all right? And then we had the Pega layer. So let me say those again. You have org, division. Now, remember, division is optional. And then if I'm running an implementation, application is implementation, then Pega layer, or it's org, framework, and then the Pega layer. There's never a division when we look at the framework application. So I want you to remember those, because when we create data, data can be in any one of those layers. It can be in the org layer, and you'll always see that it's prefixed with the word data. So it could be org dash data. It could be in the divisional layer. It would be org dash division dash data. It could be in the framework layer. It'd be org dash fr dash data, or FW, not FR, FW for framework. Or it could be in the implementation layer, and that would be org dash division dash application name dash data. So you'll see that naming convention that's laid out. So let's take a look at that. I'm in the App Studio, but in order for you to see if your data is in one of those layers. You have to remember that in the layers, you have classes. And those were the names I was giving you, the name of the classes, org dash data, org dash division dash data. Those are the names of the classes that I'm giving you. So let's go to the Dev Studio. Dev Studio. And this is very, very important because as a business architect, with the mindset of a business architect, you will create your data entities, your data model, but you have to understand a portion of it will be in the work implementation layer, and a portion of it will be in the data implementation layer. So they may be in the same layer, but one is represented by the work data that you need, which is typically transient as your case is open and worked on, move back and forth. And then you have your data object. Those are reusable objects, and they are used so that eventually you're going to save that information, push it to the data object so that it can be stored into a database. In the Dev Studio, I can go to the App Explorer. In the App Explorer, if you remember, gives me a implementation view of all of my case types as classes. Those are the green leaves that you see. So you see the estate planning, international transfer, investment account, tax optimization, and wealth plan. Those are exactly the same names that you saw for the case types. So let's go and look at estate planning. In estate planning, let me just go here and see that this says my org, so that's at the org layer, dash wealth MA1 dash work. So I know that that is in the implementation layer. This particular application has an org layer. It doesn't have a division layer. It has an implementation layer. So it has an org layer and an implementation layer. So all of your classes you'll find will either be in your org layer or your implementation layer, which means that if I have data classes, I have some data classes in my org layer, I have some data classes in my implementation layer. So let's take a look at that. The way I do that, I can remove some of the characters, and you'll see in my list now, let's do it this way. At the org layer, let's see. All right. At the org layer, you can see now that there is one data class. At the org layer, there's one data class. Now let's go back to this and let's put a dash. And now let's go to the implementation layer. And you'll see that there's a data class and there's a work class. At the implementation layer, you have a data class and you have a work class. Now, you can have your data model representing information in both the work and in the data. So when it is represented in the work class, then you have to go down to the data model of a particular case type, and you see the properties that are there. Those are considered data model fields in a work class. Now, we have some properties. Now, property is a rule type that stores information. So we have some data classes, some data properties that will also access a data object. So if you guys are familiar with Java, C++, C Sharp, how you can create a reference to an object. So now if I look at a property and I expand it, that lets me know these three, they are references to a data object. They are references to a data object. And if I click here, it will tell me the data object that it is referencing. The same thing holds true for the other one. It tells me the data object that this reference is pointing to. So I want you to understand that in your data model, you will have both information in your work class and you'll have information in your data class. So here's an example of the data class, and here's the example of the investment portfolio that's up there that is making reference to. And of course, it has its own data model, and this data model is going to show you the properties. So these properties should be exactly the same because this reference is pointing, this work class property reference is pointing to the data class object. Let me say that again. This work class property reference is pointing to the data class object, investment portfolio. So in summary, I just explained that your data model will have representation in both the work object or the work class and in the data class. Now, they can be in the same layer, implementation layer, or they can be in different layers. In our case, we have both the work class and the data class in the same layer. Now that you know the detailed implementation, let's go back at a very high level. Go back to the App Studio. App Studio allows you to easily create and add fields. We call them fields sometimes, but a field is a property is a field. So don't get those confused in Pega. We'll say field, and that just means information that we're representing, that we're capturing. We'll say property, information that we're representing, that we capture. But now the word field has a additional meaning. Many times you may see or hear the word field being used as a field on a UI as a component, like a drop-down list. That's a field, or if I need to type into a field, we'll call that a field also. But just know that even in that case, that UI has to have some way to store the information, and it's always stored in a property. So let's take a look at how do we first discover where our data model is. Let's look at one of the case types first before we look at all of the case types, because Pega gives you an opportunity to look at all of those case types. So if you bring up your wealth management that we created from the blueprint, it should look similar to mine or just like mine. And notice that there's a tab that says data model. Click on the data model, and that will show you all of the fields that are represented. Now, you should know now, since I gave you the implementation architecture, that if you see an object, most of them are in blue, some of them mean something else, but here's this object, here's that investment portfolio object, here's the test tax information object. These are objects. You see an object, you know that is making reference to a data class. So this property, this actual value that's called DSD IC names, it is a property, it is a work property, but it's referencing a data object. in one of the data dash classes. But it's very easy. If I wanted to add an additional field to my data model for the estate planning case type, I simply go up and I say add field. And I can say, so that I can keep up with them. Let me log in. It lost my login. Give me just a second. I need to log in. Okay, I think it logged me in. All right, let's try it again. So just so I can keep up with them, I always put DD, location. So I'm creating a field or a property called location. When I do that, I can specify the type of data that it will represent. It defaults to a text line, simple character text. Characters and symbols can be entered in it, but I do have other options. From the drop down, I can choose a text paragraph. A text paragraph indicates if I want to create something like a note, if I want multiple lines of information and I want to be able to capture that. Boolean is typically translated into a UI radio button or a group of radio buttons. You have to click one versus the other. So, but that's a Boolean. It represents true or false. Currency, of course, here it represents a decimal value, but it allows you to put dollar signs and anything else to represent money. Date and time. So that's the typical date and time stamp that you get. If you only want the date, then you can specify that I only want date. If I want decimal, then that means that's a decimal point that will be put there. So that's a numeric value. If I want an email type field, it will do some default editing for you to make sure that you have a name, the @ sign, and a domain that follows it with the domain name dot something. So that's a field type. You have an integer. An integer is a whole number. So it's not a decimal or fractional number. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10,000, 10,000. Those are whole numbers. And then it has percentages. It has a phone. So it will format and look for a phone number based upon your region. That region setting has to be set in place for you because it's different in the United States than it might be in Mexico or Europe. A pick list. You can create what's called a static pick list. If you want to say choose from these colors in your pick list, you can say yellow, orange, red, green. Then that can happen. If you only want time only, that's part of the time and date stamp. You can get that. You can specify this to be a URL, any type of attachment, addresses, location, prediction, some of these advanced data objects that we'll use sometimes. Most of the time we'll use data references because we want that data dash class information that's reusable, a template that's reusable outside of the case. Sometimes we'll use case data and embedded data. It's only data that we need for the existence of the case within the case, and it doesn't necessarily have to be stored. We'll talk about query and user data later on, but you see that you have quite a few to choose from. So for location, I'll just simply put it to be a single line. Okay. I have some advances. If I want to add a description, I can. Now note that Pega, if you add a description, then Pega will use that when it's creating documentation for you. It will pull the description. So you'll have a data dictionary that has full descriptions of all of your properties. And that's great if you're a business architect. That's part of your responsibility to make sure that you document that type of information. Maximum length, the expected length, and the type of input method that you want it to have. So you see all of that happens very easily because you're building a form. Pega is creating a rules like an object in OO, but it's creating a rule instance, a configured rule instance based upon the form information that you give it. Once I hit the submit, it's then going to add that one field to my data model, right? And so let's see, here it is at the bottom. It says DD location, single text. It's added to the application layer. That's called the implementation layer, that application layer. And it is defined there. I have to hit my save button. Okay. Now remember, I did it in the estate planning. So I know that it was stored as part of the data model in the work class. But let's see if that's true. How would I do that? Well, I would have to go into my Dev Studio. And from my Dev Studio, I'll have to go to my App Explorer. And let's see if I can bring back a little bit more of my information here so I can see everything. I won't work. Wanted to refresh. A second for it to refresh. Oh, my system is moving a bit slow. Come on, come on, come on, come on. See if I just refresh the whole application, see what happens here. Okay, so now let's try to go back to Dev Studio. If it will open up my Explorer for me. So it should show me all of my case types. See if it'll refresh. There we go. All right, system's a little slow. So we created that in my state planning, if I remember. Go to my data model and I look in the properties and you see there's the DD location. So what did I do? In App Explorer, since this is a collaborative environment, things that are created in the App Studio, I can see it in Dev Studio and vice versa when they pertain to a case type. So here's this location property. It's set to the text and the same information that you saw in the App Studio. Okay. Now, it's not associated with a data object. It is in the implementation layer. It's in the work class, but it only exists for the work class. It's not associated with a data object. All right, so let's go back to App Explorer. And let's get into our case types again. Let's create one that has what we call in Pega data relationship. We have a property that's going to be defined in my data model that is in the work class, but we're going to make it reference a object, a data object that's also in the application layer or the implementation layer, but it's in the data class. And that data class can be reusable. So in this case, we'll go back to the data model and we will add a field. You do it the exact same way, whether you're creating a simple field or you want to create a field reference so that we create a data relationship. So again, I'll use the DD location information. So I want more than just a location. I want location information. In this case, I'll use one of the more advanced data types, and I'll make it a data reference since I wanted it to be a data object. Well, if I want to make it a data reference, remember this name will be the property name in the work class, but I needed to reference a data object. So I'll need to create me a data object since one doesn't exist that I want, and I'll call it DD location, and I'll do OK. It says single record, list of records, many. If I want single records, it's similar to me doing a query to the database, bringing back one record, or if it may be a list of records, I may say, give me all of the people in this class. Now, I wanted to bring back a list. But if I'm saying a single record, I only want one person from this class. That would be a single record, but it would be all that information for that single record. So we'll go with single, nothing that we have to do for advanced, and I'd say submit. Now in your exercise, you'll do something similar to this. No, you'll do something just like this, but you'll do it a different way. So there are many ways to implement a data relationship. Your challenge will show you one way. I'll show you another way. There's a third way to do it that's very manual, but the two ways that you're learning, these are probably the best ways to do it. So you see, now I've created DD loc info, but I know that it points to a data object. Now, I understand that my challenge is that data object is not created. So I have to go and create and give it some fields so that it'll have something to make reference to. Now I can go into my data model and I can create a field. Now, remember, this is going to be all within that data model. So if you're familiar with creating a class that has objects, those objects has their attributes or properties, that's what I'm doing now. So I need to say region, countries. Let's do like country. All right, so where in what country are you in? I need to say location. Is it by water? No, I don't want to say that. Population. No, size. Just so I can change different type. Size can mean anything. Size of the location, whatever. But I'll just say decimal. And then I will say submit another. And let's see, notes. And I'll change this to a paragraph. And I'll submit. Okay. So now you see that my data model for this object, it has country, size, and notes. I can create what's called data records. In other words, I can add some data to it. So in this case, I want to add a location. I don't know. I'll just give it some big number. I have no idea. Notes. Very friendly place. Visit. Right? I'll say the United States. All right. It's where I live. Okay, let's go to another one. Europe. Just making the size up. Place the um, place with many countries and states. Okay, so now it allows me to create data records. I created a data object or data class for a data object. Now I can add data to it. Now, there are many ways to populate your data object when it's instantiated in memory. You can pull from another database, or you can use what we call, this is a reference or a local library that we're actually creating. And so I then save that. So why did it not like this one? Notice it will present you with errors if there's something, probably my number is too big. Now let's try to save it. I created an arbitrary number. Well, let's see if, trying to see if it's giving me an error message somewhere. Maybe the number's still too big. I think it's the number. Everything else should work. There we go. My arbitrary number was too big. So what did I do? I created a data object. I created data records. And Pega also creates a rule that will allow you to access that information. Some of you may know it as a data access object in other languages, other object-oriented languages, but here we call it a data page. A data page. A data page is very, very powerful. It allows you to retrieve data. If you're familiar with model view controller, it's that um, item that when data is in the model, it allows you to move it from the UI to calculate it, move it to some place where it can be stored permanently. And it creates 3 data pages for you. One that will bring back a whole list. So you specify a list. If you're familiar with SQL, it's a where clause. You bring back a list of information. If I only need to bring back one set of information, one particular location, then I can bring that back, and it creates a data page for me to save the information. That information can be saved. So with that being said, let me go ahead and save it. I want to make sure I don't lose anything. Now all of that is saved for me. Let's see, I think I can go to, yeah, so I can open this in Dev Studio. Now watch this. Remember I said these are collaborative environments. So I can open it in Dev Studio, and now it gets me to that data page, and I can actually run it and quickly show you that it's going to produce output for me. So it's generated all of the code, all of the logic for me to then run it. And when I run it, it runs a query against that database, and I get 3 results, PX results. Those are my result sets. If you look in the result sets, United States, my notes in the size for the first one. If I'll look in the second one, you'll see that it's Europe, placed with many countries and states, and a size. And then finally, the third one, I believe it says Mexico, very friendly place to visit, in that arbitrary size that I created. So you'll learn a lot about data pages when we get into system architect, but you just saw how we were able to create a property in App Studio that reference a data object, and then to go in and create that data object and then add data records to that data object. So now that we're over in the Dev Studio, I can click on data types. And in data types, you'll see that it created that data object for me. So I can see all of my data types here. As a matter of fact, just remember that all of the data types for all 5 of those case types, they actually show up here. And they all have 3 data pages where they can bring back a list of information, 1 row of record of information, or you can save that information. So this is the implementation layer that you see, and these are all data classes in data objects. Now, they may be in the implementation or application layer, but they are our data classes in that implementation there versus the work properties that will be in the work class. So let's go ahead and go back to App Studio. I'm almost through with my lecture now. I want to make sure that you saw that information. Let's get back to my case types. All right, so now I'm back at one of my case life cycles, and you saw where I went to the data model and we created those data properties. So now you know how to add fields that are very simple fields that you can add, or you can create a data relationship where it actually has a data object that's associated with it. So overall, how do I see my data model? In App Studio, there is my Data Explorer that I have here. It gives you a different look than the Data Explorer in Dev Studio. Remember, Data Explorer in Dev Studio gives you the implementation view from that portal. Here, I'm in the App Studio, so I need the business architect design view of my data model. So quickly, you can see now, I've talked about data objects. They give you a page that says, these are all of your data objects. So those data objects always reference data classes. So these are my data objects. And by the way, these are my data pages that are configured to go and manipulate data from those data objects that swings from the UI to a data source to calculations in the middle. That's what the data page is for. All of these are lists except for the last 2. These are savable data pages. So remember I said each data object has 3 types of data pages. These are referenced by the case types. Isn't this amazing? Now you can see, remember I said that the data objects should be reusable for efficiency's sake. So here, this parent holding data object is used across 3 case types: investment account, wealth plan, and 2 more: internal international transfer and tax optimization. Whereas you see for estate planning, only the DDIC object is being used there. So from a design perspective, this is a great picture for a business architect. They need to see which one of the case types are referencing the data objects and maybe what data page is being utilized. So we look at that, and then I can go and click on the view. And now it says, well, maybe from a data dictionary perspective, I need to look at all the fields that are there. So inside of estate planning, I can expand it, and it shows me all of my data fields that I have here. And then it gives me a model that says for this case type, it's referencing these 4 data objects that are being utilized. So it gives you a map. From a design perspective, that's all I need to know from a business architect perspective. So let's go back to this. And I believe I have one last picture to show you. My integration landscape, I go view, and here it says for the whole wealth management application, these are all of the data objects. And of the data objects, I click on them, it shows me that I have my data pages associated with it. Different views of the same data. Okay, and your exercise will show you how to create a data object from here. So I can go upper right hand corner and I can create a data object from here. I showed you how to do it the other way for a particular case type to then go and create it that way. All right, so that covers what I wanted to show you about data types, data objects, data model. Oh, I did have one more thing to show you. Forgot about that because part of it is to understand how to um, validate, data. All right. Oh, well, one way you can do it is if I know that I have a step that's going to require me to gather information. Remember, this is a collect information step. I go and on my configure my user views, it will allow me that says, well, since I'm capturing that data, what type of conditions do I need to put on it? And I can add validation. I can say that I can I can use a certain field. So let's say that when the asset value is equal to or greater than 1.0, I want to generate a message says not enough and more. Okay. So that allows me to do validation that for that particular field on a UI, if you enter in that information, it has to pass that validation criteria. And you can set that for, of course, any field that's on that UI page for that collect information. So I wanted to share validation with you. And one more I wanted to share with you is, let's see, a data transform. So data transform is how we manipulate data in Pega. It's like a big assignment operator. So I'll go to the App Explorer again, go into data model, see if I can find a data transform. And here in my data transform, this particular form, as you can see, I can set values. I just happen to be setting this value equal to null, these 4 values equal to null. Equal to is like the assignment, assign the source to the target. And so those are the different types of rules that we have for our data model. A data model will consist of properties. The properties can be work properties. They can be data classes. They can be part of the work classes. And we can validate that data. And we use a data transform to manipulate the data. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you for listening to the lecture and continue to work on your essays. Get caught up, please. You have Tuesday to work on them. We'll look at constellation on Wednesday. And if you have any questions, please contact me. Thank you for your attention. Have a good evening, and I will see you on Wednesday afternoon. Bye. And let me stop the recording.